I do not understand why some immigration attorneys, or attorneys who don't focus on immigration is probably more likely, are telling clients to stay in a failing marriage and to not get legally divorced because it's going to mess up their I-751 petition to remove conditions on residency. I think that's a really bad strategy, and let me explain what the possible outcomes can be and what my reasoning for that is and what I would advise such a client. For those of you who don't know, when you get your green card through a marriage-based family petition, on the day you become a permanent resident, if your marriage was less than 2 years old, you'll receive a conditional green card. Normal green card, you have all the rights and privileges of a permanent resident. You could travel, you could petition for people, all the good stuff. But your green card expires in 2 years. And before it expires, within the 90-day period before it expires, you have to file Form I-751, which is a petition to remove the conditions on your green card so you can get a full 10-year green card. And the purpose of this is to submit additional evidence that your marriage is in good faith. It's to reduce the instances of marriage-based immigration fraud by showing like, hey, we're still living together, we're still sharing our lives together, here are more photographs, here are more bank accounts, here's more evidence of our travel, if you have kids, just all the same evidence you would ordinarily submit, just way more of it now, is what would be due with that I-751 petition. But what happens if your marriage is falling apart? Like the marriage was in good faith. You intended to stay married, you loved the person, whatever the reason for getting married, as long as it was a valid reason and not just solely for an immigration benefit. What USCIS defines as a good faith marriage is you plan to share your lives together. Most officers would agree that that's what they would define as a good faith marriage. If your marriage is falling apart, whether it's abusive, actually that's a bad example because you might qualify for another green card under VAWA if everything falls apart, but let's just say if it's abusive or it doesn't rise to the level of physical abuse, it's just a toxic relationship, or the marriage just falls apart for whatever reason, it's cordial, it doesn't matter. If you know 100% that you're gonna get divorced, my general advice is don't wait to get divorced. The biggest mistake I see people make, and by the way, just a caveat, speak with me or an immigration attorney before you do anything, just to make sure your strategy is sound. But anyway, back to the strategy. If you're gonna separate, right? Let's say, for example, you get married, you get your conditional green card. About a year after you get your conditional green card, there's infidelity and it's a deal breaker and the marriage is just over and you guys separate, and the plan is like, let's just wait this out. Your US citizen spouse is on board to just like remain legally married even though the marriage is over, just so you can get your 10-year green card. I see this happen all the time and it's a terrible strategy. And let me explain why. First of all, when it's time to submit evidence of your good faith marriage and file the petition, you're gonna need your US citizen spouse's signature. And you might say, okay, whatever, my US citizen spouse is on board. They agreed to sign the I-751 petition with me. That's not a good strategy. First of all, you need to submit evidence from the last 2 years showing you guys have been living together and sharing your lives together. You're not gonna have that. You're gonna have stuff from the first year, and then the evidence is gonna be much weaker for the second year where you guys are physically separated, not physically sharing your lives together. There's gonna be no evidence of traveling together. You might have bank accounts, you might have tax returns, you might have some financial stuff, a lease agreement. That might not be enough. And there's a chance that 2 years later, USCIS can issue a request for evidence asking for way more evidence. And now you guys have been physically separated for 3 years. And now your US citizen spouse might even have a new partner or someone they want to marry, and now they really want to get legally divorced. And if you get called in for an interview and you're legally married, both spouses have to attend. And if you go to that interview and you say, we've actually been physically separated for the last 3 years, that's not a good situation to be in. I would way rather you be legally divorced, because if you're legally divorced at that point, your US citizen spouse doesn't have to attend that interview. You have to attend an interview by yourself. And all you need to do is prove that when you entered the marriage, it was in good faith. If it was in good faith, that's normally not that hard to do. I have a strategy for these cases. What I really like to do is prepare a detailed statement explaining what happened in the marriage in the beginning, what made you guys attracted to each other, when did you move in together, how's the marriage going in the beginning, in the middle, and then how did the marriage fall apart and where do you stand now? When we prepare these detailed statements and then we submit tons of evidence to corroborate all of it, usually these I-751 petitions get approved pretty easily at the interview. The USCIS officer at these I-751 interviews has one job. When they got married, was it in good faith or was it a fraudulent marriage for an immigration benefit? If they believe that the marriage was in good faith, then the I-751 gets approved and you get your 10-year green card. And usually at that point, 5 years have passed since you got your first green card and you're probably eligible for naturalization at that point. So I recently consulted with somebody who said his attorney told him, don't get divorced, because if you get divorced, the I-751 is going to get denied. And that is so far from the truth. In fact, I would say it's more likely to get denied if you stay legally married, because if your US citizen spouse doesn't attend the interview, or they do attend the interview and you guys don't know stuff about your day-to-day lives because you haven't lived together for a while, that's when you should expect a USCIS officer to get suspicious and maybe deny that I-751 petition after determining that you haven't met your burden of proving that you're in a good faith marriage. Anyway, guys, I just wanted to make this video because I've heard this 10 times in the last few months from different clients from different parts of the country who are in marriages that have basically ended, but they're separated, not legally, they're just not living together, and they don't expect the marriage to ever work out or get back together. If there's a chance the marriage could work out in the future, even a 10% chance, my advice would be totally different, and it's case by case. So anyway, if you are in a bad marriage and you're a conditional resident and you just need some guidance, you want to create a strategy, even if you're not looking to hire an attorney, I'm your guy. My name is Puyan Darian. I'm an immigration attorney. My office is in New York, but I handle cases nationwide because immigration is federal, so we could do it nationwide, being licensed in one jurisdiction. If you need any assistance with these cases, I do a ton of marriage-based I-751s after the spouses have divorced. So if you need any guidance on that or assistance, you can find my consultation link in the video description below. You can book a consultation, it takes 5 minutes. And I look forward to speaking to you about your case. And if you need assistance, I'm happy to represent you in your case. If you're new to my channel and you want to stay up to date on the latest immigration topics, what's happening in USCIS interviews, what's happening on the ground with ICE and detentions, or changes in immigration court procedure, be sure to subscribe. I'm trying to put out 5 videos a week explaining all these topics from an immigration lawyer's perspective. So if you're interested in that, I would love to have you as a subscriber, and I'll see you guys next time for another video.